Welcome to the Dungeon Crawlers podcast, casting light on the depths of online multiplayer gaming. I am your host, but not your main host this evening, Aggelos. And with me, Isarii, writer over at MMOGames.com, and Tamriel Foundry with his own personal blog, The Errant Penman. How you doing, buddy?
Good. And I've actually been super busy recently, so unfortunately we may have to find more websites to fit into there since I've got another two that can be put up on the list soon. But yeah, things are good.
All right, I'm gonna start putting.
I just want to let me just throw one thing to the chat here because my girlfriend doesn't think I'm funny, but you know me, I of course think I do. We're gonna throw a house party soon, and I'm thinking the Mr. Worldwides of March, like the Ides of March, but Pitbull themed. Huh?
Dead silence. I got nothing.
Yeah.
I agree with your girlfriend.
I was waiting for a gong noise to happen.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that definitely needs the light, but
you should have let me know ahead of time. I would have put it on my soundboard. Anyway, joining us again this week, Twitch streamer herself, Taruha. Yeah.
Hello, I'm here. I do things. You know.
She does things. Yes. And we have a special guest. We fired Brodin because he sucks. And we got Anhrez. All right, the Econ PvPer, economics-focused, crazed MMO fan, occasional streamer, and writer over at MMOCentral.com. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm excited. There's just so much that have been dropped recently about Crowfall. I'm excited to tear it apart with you guys. It's gonna be fun.
It's always fun to get together with other fellow MMO gamers because this is what we do. We live, breathe, eat, sometimes, gank people in MMOs. That's it. This is a special episode of the Dungeon Crawlers because, like our first one, we're talking about only one game this week, and that game is Crowfall. Isarii, who's going to be our main chair this week, is going to take over at this point. I'm just throwing you in there, man. Have fun.
damn it! No, okay, I guess I could do that. So I do have plans, sort of. For tonight. So basically I'm going to start with a general overview of Crowfall where we'll just talk about for a few minutes what it is just in case nobody knows. And then we're going to talk a little bit about basically those of us that have played the most recent beta, what we thought, what the game is like now, where it seems to be headed and feelings there. And then talk some systems like really in depth. So depending on what your knowledge of, there should be something for everybody a little ways down the line. But we want to make sure that we didn't just jump into the in-depth without telling anybody what the game is trying to be. So, I guess for a general overview of Crowfall, it is a sandbox PvP title, as there are many others. This one, I think one of the big things that really sets them apart conceptually at a very, very high level is that they are making their campaign world.
Oh no.
I believe Isarii just completely got so excited. He died
He's
before his time.
So God, he lives in a big city, for Christ's sakes.
No,
is he working on his?
So young.
I don't know. No, I'm having like some sort of. It's a driver
stroke
problem tonight. I couldn't even get like the Bluetooth thing to work.
911?
Oh God. See, this is what happens when you're at where was I when I died? I think I was saying temporary campaign worlds.
Right. You were, and
so basically, they looked at games like Shadowbane, who has a lot of the same team there, and EVE Online is probably an example more people are familiar with. And they said, okay, these persistent games have run like this, and we want to do something similar. But what we found is, there's too much ability for, successful groups of players to become entrenched, where they just can't be taken out by anybody. So they made them temporary, basically. So you'll join in to a campaign that will last some weeks to some months. And yes, it ends. There's going to be victory conditions, and this allows them to experiment with a lot of different rule sets as well. There'll be varied death penalties. Some will be faction-based. Some will be more factions. Some will be 3, some will be 12, I believe. And some of them will be free-for-all, and, basically guild versus guild is what that turns down to, which is personally what I find the most interesting and what kind of sets this apart, especially for me, from games like Camelot Unchained that are, more focused on the RBR component. So that's the first thing. I don't know. Do we want to do point-by-point discussion here?
Well, yeah, we can do a point-by-point, but I want to throw something in here real quick as well. when you said about Shadowbane, the team, they actually have one of the things that attracted me when they first kicked off this Kickstarter is the talent that they brought into it.
Yeah.
I mean, Todd Coleman, who did Shadowbane, he did a couple other games too. I'm trying to remember what all they
Wizard 101. He did Pirates 101. He had a bunch of backgrounds in some MUDs that did really well. So he has the understanding of making money and making a game, and sometimes one of those two things are missing in some studios.
Right. We got Gordon Walton on here, who's
oh God.
I mean, he was Star Wars Galaxies, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is going to be one of the few episodes where I'm really justified in bringing up Star Wars Galaxies.
The one time.
20 seconds. I'm going to do it no matter what game we're talking about, but we've got some crafting discussions slated for later, and you're just going to hear me being like, so in Star Wars Galaxies, this is how it works, just the whole time. The whole time.
That Isarii, part of why you're probably just creaming your pants at this game is that it has someone from Star Wars Galaxies involved with it, right?
And Ultima Online. Don't forget.
Yeah.
I mean, not only that, he had Ultima Online and then some SWOTOR. So, he's got the cap in.
We all make mistakes.
Don't talk about
Nobody's perfect.
It's all about the range.
Yeah,
I started with Ultima Online, so when I heard that, that
me
was
too.
a big one.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Pickpocketing the dummy with the bells. Come on now. That's how you do your skills.
And I believe
range though kind of speaks well to what the game is trying to be. Is you've got sort of the UO-styled free-for-all open-world PvP component, and then they're basically trying to match Star Wars Galaxies' economy, some of its player interdependence, and all of that into the same game together. And to me, that sounds perfect. So that's why I'm here.
With
Absolutely.
a Game of Thrones-y inspired.
Yeah. No,
Right.
Yeah,
yeah,
with the Game of Thrones aesthetic.
yes,
that is.
which is the setting that works for me. And I believe they have. I'm not sure if he's just a contractor, but Ralph Koster, who's huge in the MMO area.
He's
He's big. Well, did you get a chance to see his fly on the wall videos that he did with the lead developer Thomas Blair, who has a background in Star Wars Galaxy,
Uncle
etc.
Bob?
But Uncle Bob.
I love Uncle Bob.
Uncle Bob. And so the fact that they actually are bringing him in for brainstorming for ideas and concepts, and the fact that they're throwing out some videos on it, realize that the nerdiness of us want to see how those ideas are being created.
And Ralph Koster is probably my favorite MMO person. It doesn't seem like he's kind of hands off. It seems like he's in meetings, weekly almost. Because they sent him out for promotion as well. I had an interview that it turned out he was on. I didn't know he was going to be on it. Maybe they did that because of my questions. Because I was like, you guys were talking about interdependence. In Ralph Koster's blog, where he was dissecting Star Wars Galaxies, he sort of talked about this element. How are you planning to fit this in? Like that kind of thing. So when I saw his name on the replies, I was like, yes! And that'll be in the show notes. But
Aggelos, can we do something for this episode? Can we have a counter of every time Isarii says Star Wars Galaxy?
I am 100% on board with that.
And make him donate to a local charity of your choice if it reaches a certain level.
I'm liking that, ladies and gentlemen. I've got my little marker right
I don't know
here.
about all of that.
Let's see, how many times was
the
it?
counter idea is not bad. It's going to be a lot.
I think it's like 15 already. I don't know. I lost count.
I brought the crafting guy on for a reason, okay?
I'm going to give him 4 to be generous, but we're already at 4 times, so I'm keeping a counter.
Okay.
That's good.
Okay, well, next point, besides that, it's a sandbox PvP game, temporary world so people don't get overwhelmed, and is full of Star Wars Galaxies developers.
Can we talk about temporary worlds? Because
we didn't we touched
over
the main point.
It is.
Yeah, you didn't say anything about it. We just poked at it.
So I'm a little torn actually. As long as they're long, I think that's something that can work really well. But I do kind of like the build up. Part of this is that we live in sort of a post World War B MMO space where the great giant that no one ever thought would be toppled in Eve was toppled, and it was amazing the way basically the entire rest of the game came together to do it. And it is cool when those types of things happen, but they did basically dominate the game for like 8 years before that. So,
Well, can I just? I mean, we can reference other MMOs on here and bash them, right? Can I say I'm hoping temporary worlds are what Guild Wars Realm factions were going to be in my mind, even though I wasn't paying attention. Like, I could just pop into something and I could be entertained, but I don't have to be engaged there the whole time. And if I would come into Guild Wars and see that we were being raffle stomped, well, I would just leave. It wouldn't be even worth it to go into it anymore if you were being so dominated. So it's like a small chunk of the game didn't exist for a while, where I'm hoping with temporary games, I'll have 3 or 4 campaigns to choose from. These guys are getting crushed. Maybe I'll back up 2 campaigns and go guild versus guild or something, because I feel like it's a little more competitive.
Right. And when I first heard Temporary Worlds 2, it kind of hit me right in the heart, because it made me question the game as, is this really an MMO? Because one of the main things, and I argue this, whether or not Taruha, because I know we had this argument, whether having a lot of people play your game does not make an MMO.
Yeah. We were.
In my mind, it requires a persistent world, something that continues after you. So when I heard about these decaying worlds, I'm like, is that really going to be the MMO feeling that I'm looking for? But on
the other hand, some of its worlds may last longer than games like WildStar. So no, Anhrez is from the WildStar community side.
Snap, but true.
Right in the heart.
The stank on that one. Ooh.
Nice.
But no, it's true. Like, as long as the world lasts long enough and goes from there, and the Eternal Kingdoms really sold me as a way of continuing your legacy outside of just the world that's dying. And I like.
Why don't you say what that is before you continue?
Oh, we were going to hit that. Eternal Kingdoms being the take home, the place that you're building up as your kingdom. So it's essentially, and I love one of the videos they did, it's essentially like Tetris pieces that all fit together that you can put in this zone, that as your influence grows, as your standing grows, your entire kingdom will grow, and you can actually, as a leader of a guild or kingdom, whatever you want to call it at that point,
an individual
can actually divvy out parts of your kingdom to other people to rule underneath you. It's really fascinating. It's more
or less the same as the campaign worlds, except there's, first of all, the rewards there are very, very minimal. You're not going to be like getting almost anything of value economically speaking in these worlds. But you build it the same way that the campaign worlds are, and it's just this little Care Bear land where you can hang out.
So that's where all the role players would be hiding.
Well, not only role players, but it's like, where do you come back to show off the stuff that you just crushed everyone else from, right? So relics, I don't know if you guys have been on and you're able to take things back from the campaign and build things, set up crafting stations. I've already got 4 people lined up to use my EK as a shopping center, Anhrez's weapontorium. And so they're all going to be able to set up shops. We're going to trade shop locations. I like you. It's a style of RP, but it's just an economic style of RP instead of RP.
Well, I mean, role-playing as a whole is you're putting yourself into a role, whatever it is, and your backstory is you're merchants. You're growing a merchant empire. You're still role-playing because you are putting yourself in the shoes of a character that you're playing.
That actually, that kind of brings me back to one of the things we were talking about in pre-show, which is a Raph Koster quote when he was talking about Star Wars Galaxies. And,
marking it down.
One of the things he was saying was that the way the game was designed basically forced you to roleplay. Like, even if you weren't intentionally doing it, just the emphasis on social things. Like, I really don't need to. I'll talk about this later. But there was a form of PTSD basically that they modeled that you would take on, where you'd have to go to a cantina where other players could heal you of that. The dancer players and the musicians. It was really cool. And then you're building your house because you have to do that. If you're a crafter, you would have a house. You would set up a shop there with NPC vendors, and that's very RP-ish, and it really hooked players in the world, which is why you have people like me, years later, who just won't shut up about how great this game was because it was special. So I think Crowfall is trying to do a little bit of that outside of the heavy PvP stuff.
I'm interested though in these like social areas. Are they the things that you can buy for insane amounts of money on their website, are those like the social hubs, and then you have to get in contact with the people that have spent the money, or how does that work?
To buy into Crowfall, you're going to have your own Eternal Kingdom with some sort of building on it and some land. So if you bought the starter package right now, you'd probably get, to use the Tetris pieces, you'd get a certain amount of Tetris pieces, and you'd get, let's say, a fort or a lodge or a cottage, and it would have a certain size, and you would build your EK, and you would set your rules. Now, does that mean that for some reason you run across an RP guild that has pooled their money and they decide to buy the Mountain Kingdom at a ridiculous price? Well, they can do that if they wish. And then they're like, you rock. We want you to be on our EK with us. We're going to give you these 3 acres of land. We're going to drop a cottage on there for you. And you have rules and regs to help set up the rest of the thing in the EK. So if you want to build things, you can come here with us. So you get an EK at the cost of purchase. No one really knows, even we can just guess, how's that going to work out? Because I can actually gift you plots of land. So I can say, hey,
some sort of availability, let's say, for players post-launch that come in. Like there's a way to get it through gameplay, I think.
There is.
Yeah. And I don't think anybody's locked out. There might be exclusive buildings or something.
Let me interject here with this one, just because I want to put that in here. There are some exclusive buildings that came from the early Kickstarter stuff. I think a lot of it's going to be cosmetic-ish. But everything else you can earn in the game. Even like Taruha and I were pre-show having this discussion about these stores, and I was explaining one of the things is the reason why these stores are here and people can buy it ahead of time is it's a way to invest the game and get some sort of reward in game. But this store will probably be gone, and I say probably. When the game comes out, because you can earn everything in the game as it is. Because everyone starts with an Eternal Kingdom. But once you're in game, it requires you to go into these decaying worlds and bring resources back out to build it up. Whereas you'll start with a little, 3 little pig straw cottage. Someone who's invested in the game monetarily during development will start at a higher level.
But isn't that a little bit pay to win?
No, because the Eternal Kingdom doesn't follow you into the dying worlds where PvP happens. Yeah, it's just your pretty house,
Okay.
Yeah.
But what about the crafting stations and stuff like that?
Crafting stations.
That comes with it?
Oh, no, that's a really good point. And so that's where a little bit of gray happens, right? So the problem when we have with campaign rules is just like the Terminator movie where you see Arnold Schwarzenegger appear naked, and he has to walk over to the first guy and kill him to take a coat. That is like one of the formats. So what you can bring into campaigns will be determined by the campaign rule set. And so in many of these campaigns, you're not going to be able to bring in tons of stuff. So you're going to have to craft, I guess, in the actual campaign that you're in. So when you look at crafting stations and stuff like that, there'll be crafting stations in the EK, because the simplest rule sets will allow people to bring in a set of armor and a weapon. But the most difficult campaign sets, you're maybe going to be able to bring in some raw materials, maybe not. So most of your impactful crafting will happen in campaign. And so the ability for me to find some crappy wood in my EK, maybe I can make some charcoal to sneak into one of the campaigns so I can cook my fire faster, but they're going to be pretty limited on what you can bring in.
I don't know if we specifically said it at this point yet, but if you're new to Crowfall and you're listening along, you probably figured out that everything in Crowfall is crafting driven, economically speaking. There's going to be no raids or anything like that where you go up against bosses and they drop loot. There might be hard to kill PvE mobs that take a group. For certain materials, maybe. We're not even sure about that, but
I don't know.
It's all crafting. Everything has durability.
I killed a zombie this last test, and he dropped a hunter's eyeball.
Permanent decay, item loss on death, all that to keep the crafting loop rolling.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying. Is there might be some rare mat drops off of mobs, and I think
they did say that already.
I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
They've talked about it. We just don't know. Like,
I mean, I have a problem with the game as well, that it has no really PvE-centric element to it, and it keeps me a little bit from being super interested, because I'm hardcore PvE. No, I like it. I like
it's just
working
not
as a
progression PvE, and I think that's a big difference.
Essentially, well,
yeah.
Okay, so it's not like with raids or anything like that. Just
no, yeah, there will be mobs to kill. There will be rewards for doing that. There will be PvP risk while you're doing it. But it's not like there's no PvE and you can never find anything to do if you plug in.
I had a friend use a World of Warcraft reference. It's like doing PvE quests back in the old day when everyone was up in South Shore killing each other with open world PvP. So, except that there's just no way to turn off the flag.
Right.
Yeah.
There's plenty of things to do. There's plenty of things to mine. But you just got to be listening and watching.
And I wanted to say one more thing before we continue on with the Eternal Kingdoms for anyone who's listening. When you have your Eternal Kingdom, they did say that limited resources will be there that you can, but it'll allow you to pretty much get into a campaign. So it's kind of like I can find copper, so I can make myself like level 1 crap to get into a campaign.
Yeah, they've even backed off now. It's going to be slag.
Okay, so it's
tier 0 iron.
You can find the bare minimum stuff to kind of make yourself walk in. But here's the kicker, what I thought was really neat. You need resources from these dying worlds. So you're playing a hero that goes into these worlds that are being consumed by a thing called the hunger, which we'll probably talk about a little later. I'm a lore guy, so I like that kind of stuff. So you're essentially battling for the gods in a kind of proto-Norse Anhrez kind of way. To wrest control of these worlds and gain resources. But as you're gaining resources, you have to put them into an embargo to send back to your Eternal Kingdom. But you have to decide, am I going to use these resources to continue the war effort so I win? Or am I going to send it back? And if you lose, depending on the campaign rule, you might not get all of your embargo. So let's say your embargo holds 100 resources, just very elementary. And it's like if you win, you get 100% of those resources. You'll lose, you get 5%. So you're sitting there going, well, I can fit 100 in there, but if I put 100 resources in here, am I going to be able to build that trebuchet to take down the castle? I'll risk it, and you lose, and you get nothing except for like 5. Like, there's that risk versus reward of, I need to build up my Eternal Kingdom to kind of show off what all I did, but I also can't send too much back home because I also need to fund the war effort here in the campaign before the world dies.
And the Eternal Kingdom really is going to be, it sounds like, fairly minimal impact. It's sort of a persistent cosmetic reward, and that's what it's supposed to be, I think.
A guild hub, maybe a trading hub kind of thing. So
it's definitely not the central focus of the gameplay. I mean, it might be something people really aspire to, but it's not going to be having a big impact on the competitive aspect of the PvP in the campaign world.
Because mostly you can't bring anything in there. You could be the richest little guy in the kingdom. You have 9,000 castles, freaking adamantite weapons, mithril weapons. But when you go to a campaign, you can bring in an iron dagger. Crap.
Yep.
Okay.
But
I'm going to move us on. Or you can go ahead.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
I was going to say, I don't want to get too lost in the weeds in our general overview here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The weeds are coming.
A lot of it's for people who listen to the podcast later who maybe never heard of this. So if you are, obviously we got Anhrez here who is an avid follower of Crowfall. This early introduction is for maybe people who never heard of this game and need a little bit of introduction before we jump into it.
So the way character advancement work is basically like Eve. You're going to have an offline skill training system. It seems to me, actually I won't get into that yet. And actually the way your characters themselves work is very similar to Eve. There's a necromancy profession that will build vessels, and your spirit will inhabit these and possess these vessels, and that can be lost on death. And I think that's really interesting. So, you've got this offline skill training where it takes, I believe they've said, and this is, a very wishy-washy number this early, something like a year to get all the way through one class in its promotion class. And that applies to everything. It's the combat classes, crafting is there, so if you want to invest in crafting, there's an opportunity cost associated with your combat effectiveness to really focus on that.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of other things in there. There's a lot of different trees. So that's how that's going to work. I think the body thing is really interesting because I don't fully understand how vessels work.
Oh, it's interesting.
I can't see there being a scenario where you don't have access to one. Is it just that the crafted ones will always be better?
It'll always be a low grade one, right? So I have no vessels positioned. I can come in and I can take the, let's call it the, well, I guess let's use this analogy. There's 2 car lots. One is the one that does, credit for yourself right then and there. They're all beat up and nasty, but they don't turn anyone down. And the other one's the really nice dealership. Let's call it the Mercedes dealership. So if you don't have your own vessel, you have to shop on the crappy beat up lot of the default base skill sets, no plus to dexterity, no plus to strength, etc. On the other hand, if you spent the time and effort, or maybe your guild has spent the time and effort, you can actually craft vessels that have enhanced statistics, enhanced stats, attributes, more strength, more speed, more dexterity, more intellect. So when you inhabit that one, you get the overall lift above and beyond what your skills have trained. So the difference being is there is a inherent advantage of spending the time doing some grave robbing to build yourself some vessels because you're able to buff those up, but they are consumable like everything else. So like you said, you can always rent from the Rent-A-Wreck site the most default of the default characters, but the concept is it gets no special tuning to it, right? There's nothing. It's off the lot with no heated seat warmers or backup camera or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
one thing. Now I'm gonna go with this before I forget it.
Okay.
Because you'll take me off on a tangent and then I won't get back to it. One of my, I guess, observations more than concerns with the vessel system is that one of the things that works really well in EVE and that makes it work is that, and this actually applies to skill training in general, is that sort of after you play the game for about a month, you can be a vital part of a group. You can always be competitive in EVE after about that 1 month period. In Crowfall, the skill training looks very, very vertical. More than horizontal. I mean, there's a lot of horizontal there, and if you're going into different classes, but straight up the class for that year, it's things like % crit chance, straight up damage, which is kind of crazy. Vessels are the same way. It's just flat up better. In EVE, if you're going in and you've just got one of the first entry-level ships, you can fit that up for a tackle ship, where basically what you do is you go into combat and snare things while other people kill them. People with bigger guns that track slower will be able to hit them. So you need the cheap ships in their tackling for the big guns to actually hit them. So there's always that sort of, everybody's always useful in EVE. I don't see that in Crowfall. I see a system where it's not that they wouldn't be useful, because one of the great things about not relying on instancing all the time is that you can always just bring more people, but they're just worse. Like there's no wishy-washy about it. If you're in the base vessel, you're in your first month of research, you're garbage. And
but remember,
a year down the road, it might be 6 months of research.
It's not just you, the vessel. So it's the guild that you're in. I mean, I think you're right, except even in EVE, based on the
I should add, by the way, there's a lot of diminishing returns.
Based on the corporation that I step into EVE as part of my, hey, I'm going to join your corp, you may front me some stuff when I come out of EVE University. I would be surprised if guilds don't have to face that too. Because you're right. We don't understand the difference between vessel tuning and equipment yet. And so that is a fair concern, is that the ability for people to come in 3 months, 8 months, and 9 months after launch, are you nothing but cannon fodder? Are they the ones that run into the breach? Because
there is the natural balancing effect in that in that type of PvP game where if you can lose everything that's on you, you don't take your best out if you think you're going to die, basically. So that's sort of what I consider more like a UO style of balance than EVE. But I just want to say it's really tempting to make that EVE analog about vessels because they seem similar in purpose at first. But then when you think about it, it doesn't seem to work much like EVE at all. Anyway, Taruha.
Yeah. unless Aggelos had something to say, because he kind of cut him
No,
off.
I was pointing at you, but I'm pointing from the stream, so I know.
I know. I just pointed
in
over,
our
"No,
thing,
that's not where she
I'm the
is."
bottom, but in this Twitch stream, you're below me. So.
Yeah. My worry was exactly that I saw that they were going to have these training abilities your specialties or whatever, like with weapons, you have something you can train and you can get it to 100%, but it takes really long time. And then people that come in later are just going to be like, what? And they're going to be completely...
saying that the maximum stat is about a 20% difference, and so that players can very easily compete with an endgame one. I disagree pretty emphatically with the 20% still being competitive. I mean, people lose their damn minds about like a 0.5% increase in other games. If you're telling me 20% is competitive, I mean, maybe, like that may make you might be able to compete if they're like an amputee or something, but if ceteris paribus, 20%, you're gonna lose. It's gonna take. I don't see skill overcoming that gap, unfortunately. Which doesn't mean it has to be. Again, it's not balanced around 1v1. It's balanced about guilds, but it's a concern. It's a big concern.
There's another thing I wanted to say before we move on as well, is that there's the fact that the VIP status is gonna let you have 3 characters that you can skill up at the same time. Which I was really worried about, because then, there's another advantage for people that, have time and money over people that, just casually play.
Yeah.
But it is horizontal.
Right. I can only play one at a time. So if I have 3 characters now, let's say I can play a duelist, I can play a confessor, and I can play a druid. I can only be in one of them at one time, so they can all be training. So I have 3 options to play in this campaign, not just one. So if a person comes in late, all 3 of their characters are going to be behind those 3 characters, or they're going to have one character that's behind those characters. Now, one thing I wanted to add was that to some community unease, both Blair and J. Todd mentioned the possibility of catch-up mechanics. They haven't really figured out what that would be, but they do feel the concern that both you guys had said, I believe, by being worried that 6 months in they need to take a look at, what is the catch-up mechanics. They don't want to devalue the time that 9 months of players have done.
Yeah.
But they do want to make sure that the game is fun when everyone is relatively compatible and we're all challenging each other. So that is something that they're thinking of, and they're concerned about it enough to bring it up on a Q&A.
One thing that, since we already talked about earlier, can one of your 3rd characters that you're leveling at the same time be a crafter? I believe the answer is no, but...
No, crafting right now is only in the general tab. So
just wanted to throw it out there.
Well, right now,
it's only,
it's 1 general skill and 3 archetype skills right now. Maybe for VIP it's 2 and 3 or 2 and 2, and that would allow you to train both combat and crafting.
A bit game breaking, honestly, if subscribers do extra crafting.
That's why as a crafter
which is why you can't do it now.
But
yeah, that's why I wanted to say it, because I thought anybody might think it.
Wasn't the whole point of like the game that they wanted to make sure that crafting was like super valuable and stuff? And if you can just make an alt that is the crafter, doesn't that sort of cancel out the problem?
Well, that's what we were saying, and the answer is that you cannot do that.
Oh,
well, no, right now, but you can create an alt, buy a whole new account, and have that be training as a separate one. And so if I had to pick one thing on the forums right now...
You can only put 1 character in a campaign at a time.
Correct.
So it would have to be a separate account.
Yes, correct.
That's an old Star Wars Galaxies holdover where you could only have...
That's the forum, though, right now. I'd say... Hey, Jonathan, I would say also for you, the number one thing on the forums when talking about the whole VIP and balance and whatever, it's this concept of Crowfall needs to show us why having 1 account and being a VIP is more fiscally smart for them and a fiscal smart play for me than owning 2 accounts.
Yeah.
And no one has the answer to that yet. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that someone smarter than me comes up with that.
The thing is,
at least you would need the subscription, though.
Yeah.
that's well.
But multi-boxing has been a thing for a lot of games. I mean, you're not ever gonna
everywhere.
You're not ever gonna be able to put a hold on multi-boxing because how are you gonna do it if the person has the money to buy multiple? And you can't IP block, like, hey, we can't have more than one connection. What if my wife's playing with me or something?
Yeah.
You know? You can't do that. There's no way to stop multi-boxing. But if someone's going to do it, they're going to do it. I mean, but they're obviously invested. They're working on multiple characters. And if they're skilled enough to play a bunch at a time, great. But I don't foresee an issue one way or the other with having a second account.
Let me throw in one more thought there before we move on to our last general overview point, and that is, again, the significance of a 20% number, even if it's much lower. Right now we have World of Warcraft doing a really great job of showing us how important the perception of how important a stat difference is. They are losing their hardcore community in droves. People are losing their damn minds over having to grind for a 0.5% DPS increase.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's, again, it doesn't matter if that makes the difference in competitive progression. They feel like it does, and that's what Blizzard has to worry about. That's just the economic reality of a customer relation. So, I mean, you're telling me people aren't going to lose their minds over 20? They're going to, and I think they'll be right.
Oh yeah.
But yeah,
sounds like a big difference.
Final bullet point is combat style. How does this game actually play? So I've said here that it's aiming, it's got projectile physics. Mm-hmm. Are projectile physics still in?
There are for the duelist pistol is still not a raycast as of last time. So there are still some aimable skills versus raycast skills.
And you are always aiming. It's just become a lot more forgiving. Is
it like a soft target now versus the very hard projectiles that it was once upon a time?
Yeah, one time it was put the X on the person. If they're jumping past and you miss your X, you missed your shot. Now I believe it's more of a large range, or the difference between shooting a bullet and shooting a shotgun. You know, the spread in that range of spread is kind of what we've been seeing lately.
Well, with this type of game, though, I mean, I understand with the whole wanting to have that. You need to have a little bit of forgiveness just due to the amount of ping. Like, someone comes in with a higher latency. Yep. Just look at any first-person shooter. You got higher than a 20 latency, you're not getting any competitive team. They'll be like, nah, get the heck out of here.
And just personal preference, when you've got a game with this kind of economic depth and, supply chain being all that important, I don't think it should come down to who can aim better and dodge better and hop around. I think that sort of devalues the entire economy of it. If there's, I hate to say it, but if there's enough skill involved that completely trumps everything else, then what's the point?
Oh, I thought you were going to say Star Wars Galaxies again. So.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to write it down.
Had nothing to do with that. I couldn't link it if I tried. But yeah, I said originally, even with projectile physics, that the game felt very, very WildStar-ish to me. You can't see all the telegraphs in front of you, but that's basically what's happening, especially if you're in a melee class. And I think it feels even more like that now that they
really didn't like WildStar.
I really liked WildStar, but I think there was an awkwardness to it where you would hit your ability and then click again to cast. That felt weird. And Crowfall's not like that. You just hit the button and it happens, and I think that's significantly better.
I looked at some gameplay footage on YouTube, and there are certain things where you have to hold in buttons.
Yeah, so you're in, if you're knocked down, you have to hold a button to get back up. There's also chained events. So if I'm a Templar, one of my first ones is a standard strike, but then I can choose to do a different one, or I can do the same attack again, where the second and third chain of that number 1 attack or number 6 or whatever type of attack is a different mechanic, a different format. So I could jump forward, I could knock them down. And so there is some combinations related to, it's kind of combos instead of necessarily just hitting 1, hitting 2, hitting 3. You may hit 1, and then you want to hit 1 again.
It very much reminds me of a much more like if you took WildStar's combat and then put a much more refined, much less nonsensical version of Age of Conan's combo system in there, where you're not just mashing directional abilities and then a finish. It's actually like you choose between different abilities as it branches. It's very cool. It's a really good way of getting a lot of skills on your bar without having a giant bar.
I think I saw someone said that at some point the combat was a little bit akin to Rift.
I got Rift examples. I've got Terra examples where there are some combo pieces in there. Terra also has a directional feel to the the attacks in front of it. It's also line of sight. As a duelist, I am always using line of sight to avoid combat. So there's a lot of interesting physics pieces related to it.
Would it be fair to when I always looked at this, one of the things that kind of stuck me is it's like a weird hybrid of WildStar, Terra, or a MOBA of sorts. Would MOBA players be at home in an MMO like this?
I think the only MOBA comparison that I would advocate for is that they are going for group roles that are more similar to a MOBA than like a Trinity-based MMO where you've got healers that aren't, as they put it, fire hose healers. They're doing a lot of support that's sort of buff-oriented with some healing. Tanks are largely sort of disruption-focused because you can't rely on an AI that's stupid.
They do have ultimates, though. I mean, if you look at WoW, there's not really an ultimate.
Ultimates have showed up.
Ultimates have now showed up, so that's not a bad point. A few, but a lot of those ultimates are best used in combinations with someone else's ultimate. So, like, one of the ultimates throws out a huge stun. Now, if you could throw that out and have Isarii happen to drop that crazy fire hurricane thing that the confessors do, you're like, what the hell just happened?
Mm-hmm. Wombo combo.
Yeah, there are some interesting pieces for it.
When I looked at the combat, it also looked a little bit smitey to me. I don't know.
And
there's
actually,
something about it.
Sin Garen said the exact same thing. Yeah, in chat that the combat feels very similar to Smite.
Yeah, no, it does look smitey. Like,
well, this. Oh, yeah.
No, I was gonna say it felt smitey. Like it felt like a MOBA. Smitey. My word. I have the best words. It really did feel like a MOBA.
The Smitey hero.
Even to the higher concept of the worlds disappearing. Yeah. The whole concept felt like MOBA, but with MMO elements.
You guys have convinced me. It's more MOBA than I thought it was. But yeah, it's good. I like it. But this actually makes a great seg to our second section, which is the state of the game. So yes, impressions from the most recent beta. The first thing that I think is really important to mention that people who followed the game early on may have noticed was that the game had animation locking. Now, this is Neverwinter is the example I like to make here because not everybody knows what this is immediately. If you've played Neverwinter, you know that once you press an ability to act, once the animation plays, you are locked into that animation. So you're effectively CC'd for the entire animation while your character does it. And a lot of the time in Neverwinter, like, you'd swing your great sword. You're not necessarily stationary because, your character will take a step forward each time that animation plays, but it's still taking control out of your hands. Now, in that game, this is why I really love it, it felt awesome in PvE because it really sort of puts a weight behind your attacks that, MMO combat generally feels a little bit floaty, and animation locking is a great way to stop that because a lot of single-player games use it for the same reason. It starts to feel a lot more like a single-player action game. The problem is when you put it in PvP because it's fucking awful. You're just self-CCing.
You can kill yourself.
All the time. Yeah, you're standing in like the red shit and you can't get out of it. Any class with a ranged attack, or if anybody just decides to walk away from you, you're like slowing down your movement every time you use an ability. It is horrible. And
someone's doing a 7-step ultimate and you're like going, this would be the time for me to take a step to the right. Yet you can't break out of your mechanic because you're busy whirlwinding.
If anybody's played Final Fantasy XIV, the Dragoon has the leap, actually a bunch of leaps that animation lock them, and that's why there's this whole meme about them being dead all the time. It's because they'll jump into it, then a circle will show up under them, and while the animation's playing, they get murdered. So floor tankies was that's called in that game. But yeah, everybody lost their damn minds about that being in the first build of the game, and it's gone now. Yeah, combat way better. It feels like a completely different game, and it's awesome now. It still doesn't look pretty. It's very much pre-alpha. Actually, it looks a lot better than it used to. But it's still a little floaty. You know, sometimes the characters step in weird ways, and the bodies kind of torque. But it feels good when it's not lagging.
But yeah, when I looked at the first video, that this was a year ago, I think, or something. The first time I ever saw anything from this game, I was like, no, never, nope, not touching it.
Nice.
and yeah, we talked.
It doesn't look like anything I would play.
We talked about this earlier too, and there's it's just something to remember that MMOs typically take 5 to 7 years to make. Yeah. And when they're crowdfunding, they're not like, "Thanks for the money, see you in 7 years." So we're all seeing stuff way earlier than we would normally. And
to be honest, we're seeing a game studio in high def. You know how they used to talk about high def was going to be horrible for the picture because it showed all the blemishes. This is kind of high def watching a studio when they're running a thin shop. Yeah. And, the blemishes are there.
That's a great turn of phrase, by the way.
It really is. You see you see them overcome things, and you see them being challenged by server stability. Hell, we saw them being hit by the Amazon S3 issue just that happened 2 days ago because they're as an organization they use forums, cloud hosting for some of their stuff, and so that threw off a lot of their things. Unlike a big fancy studio who's got 17 diesel generators and a rack larger than my house of servers that they just have them set up all over the world. So it's an interesting progression to watch them go, I guess, for me.
Right. So, and we've seen this, and I think a lot of the current generation of gamers aren't used to seeing behind the veil. The whole pay no attention to the man behind the curtain is not the generation we're in anymore. And people are so inundated with the Korean crap that gets sent over here in their alpha states, which technically has already been released in Korea for like 5 years.
Yeah.
But they don't know that. There's no difference between what was already funded over there and now just being ported over. And they're assuming every game needs to be of this level, but not everyone has that. We're looking at these games at a very early stage.
That kind of reminds me, and I know Aggelos was in the same boat when we were playing The Elder Scrolls Online back before anybody knew there was a game to play. Mm-hmm. And I mean, we're talking, there's a few early photos that did get released, but you look at like the orc character and he looks like a Pixar character. He's like this big around. He looks nothing like an Elder Scrolls orc. Giant shoulders. I mean, wasn't the game tab targeted at the beginning as well? I mean, it looked nothing like anything anybody outside of that very, very small testing pool has seen. Although it looks closer to what it looks now than it launched, now that they've actually finally added like things like nameplates. And I won't go too much.
Yeah, they took some things out and put stuff in.
All the things we spent the entire beta losing our minds about being removed or coming back, but that's a different game. It's completely different, and a lot of people aren't used to seeing testing that early, and it's normal. So it's got a long way to go. But I did actually want to talk about art style, which is my next bullet point. Conveniently enough, I like it a lot. Obviously it's not like a beautiful game yet. You need some atmospherics in the game world for sure. It feels oddly sunny. But when I look at the character models, they're awesome. The things that they're working on. They have somehow taken like the cartooniness of WildStar with the grittiness and realism in tone of, let's say, the Elder Scrolls Online, and mashed them together for something that looks great. I think will age very well and is performance conscious as well. What do you guys think?
Hey, Truth, I had a question. I had just a question. I'd say, as a person who likes to RP, you have some human classes, but the classes that you can be human are very limited, and you have monster-only classes. How does that grab someone who you are very limited? If you want to play a duelist, you have to play a hamster. If you want to play an assassin, you have to play a fae. How does that work for someone like you?
I don't like it I don't like it in any game when they lock races behind classes and genders behind classes. It's really stupid and annoying and unnecessary
and sexist and racist.
Well,
it's not sexist. It's just kind of silly. I get why they're doing it because they can put more effort into like armors looking good on them and stuff like that.
I wouldn't call it stupid because the cost associated
all right.
is astronomical.
One person talking at a time, okay? Because that was a cluster.
From a role player perspective, it's stupid because I like the freedom of choice.
Yeah, no, I like it too.
I was smacking Isarii on Anhrez. You were fine. And Tara, this is where it feels very MOBA to me, where you're selecting the character and classes almost like a hero rather than building.
You're making your own thing essentially, which is a part of why I like playing MMORPGs because I get to create a character and I feel a part of the universe. It's not like the set being that, it's not like when you play Witcher, for example. I don't really feel super immersed because I'm playing someone that's already a set character. Yeah. It's not really the same feeling I get playing playing Skyrim or Oblivion or something like that.
I think I even said when Witcher came out that if I was allowed, I love Geralt.
Yeah.
But if I could create if there was a Game Plus mode where you could make your own character, it would beat any Elder Scrolls game for me. Anhrez, you had question. Were you talking or was it?
No. I was just saying you guys are absolutely right. I mean, that's the difference between a small studio building a certain animations for a certain size body type. I mean, we saw that they actually had to do a Kickstarter, beat this goal to have a male class of the assassin because it just wasn't part of their design style. They said, hey, if you guys raise some more money and have if we stretch this goal, then we will put that as part of our piece. So I mean, who would have thought, when you look at other games, not being able to have a male and female regardless of the race characters, I think it just shows the small studio
it cuts corners financially.
I do have two thoughts on that are sort of in defense of it, though, at least in this game. I think in games like Black Desert, it's kind of ridiculous, but especially because they have a bigger budget. But budget aside, I think there's two things. Which is one, at least they're not needlessly gender locking the human classes. Giving us both options for all of them is good. So because I hate that. And two, all of the beast races play in a way, and Singarin again in chat is saying something very similar to where I'm going with this. They play in a way that wouldn't make sense for a human. The Guinnessayan is the most obvious example with the burrowing underground. That just wouldn't make any sense. The Fae have wings and they have this whole gliding mechanic. They actually use
I haven't played it, so I don't know the mechanics. But from a pure roleplay perspective, it's limiting.
The centaur, all horsey and shit.
Now,
there's speed, exactly what you'd expect.
Back to your original question about art style. I want to hear Taruha, and then I'll go, and then Anhrez, you can say the same thing. But Taruha, art style.
It's not for me.
Okay.
It's very cartoony. It's way too cartoony for me. I don't play MMOs like World of Warcraft and such because of that reason, because I can't find myself immersed. I don't know, I use that word a lot. I don't really feel at home in an MMO that looks too childish.
Right. And here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this is not a critique against Crowfall one way or the other. Because
no, definitely.
It's 100% subjective. What you think is awesome doesn't necessarily mean I think it's awesome.
I'm not saying
Wrong.
I'm the.
Oh, it's just a disclaimer.
Authority. It's just not for me.
As the story was saying, I like real life. Don't get me wrong, Witcher 3 is my favorite all-time game. I love the hyper-realism. Okay? But to that extent, if you look back at their previous games, they were all still hyper-realism to an extent of the technology that was available at the time. Games like this, there is something to be said for games that are highly stylized. Because they age well, they have an art style that is easy to grab onto and work with, that's a little different than super realistic. I mean, I'm going to throw a few examples here. Not even just MMOs. Guild Wars 2, they went with a very watercolor paint aesthetic, right? I like it. Some people don't.
Yeah.
World of Warcraft, given back in the day, they tried to make it look like their RTS, so we'll throw that out. WildStar had their own kind of the cartoony aesthetic. Sure. Overwatch has its own aesthetic that's not hyper-realism. It's kind of a little mesh of...
it's like cartoony with a mix of realism, I'd say.
A little bit. But
yeah.
it's still technically stylized in a way that it ages well.
I'd say Overwatch is super cartoony.
I would say it's super cartoony because you're not looking at someone's face. You're not looking at Mercy and looking at the pores on her face. Yeah. You know, because
I mean, the character proportions look.
But I don't role play in Overwatch.
No, and I'm not saying you role play, but there's something to be said for everyone stylizes a little. Unless it's 100% real to life, like I'm in a game right now, it's stylized. Elder Scrolls Online is stylized. Witcher 3 is stylized, even though technically there's a certain level of where their art direction went. So you got to look at it in that regard.
Can I say something real quick about like my comment of the cartoony? Like I like cartoony, but not that kind of cartoony. Like Borderlands, for example, is fabulous. I love that cartoon style. It's really cool, but I don't really like this kind.
I understand. I actually like, and I'm gonna, before I pass it on to Anhrez, one of the things that I actually liked is that there is a weird mix of more refined World of Warcraft-ish, I'm going to say ish models. So they're like a lower polygon model compared to like Black Desert, but they kind of went with at least a few of the classes. They kind of stuck with what I would consider, from what we've seen, more of a realistic look. Like you're not looking at a greatsword that would weigh essentially 5,000 pounds. Or anything of that nature. And even the faces, while it is stylized and a little cartoony, it's not heads or Overwatch, like Overwatch proportions where you're looking at, I don't know, what the pig guy or whatever, or any of these weird body proportions where I have an arm that's, the size of a tree trunk. It's all kind of real to life, but I like the bright colors. I mean, it's dark. It's kind of got this dark feel to it. Especially if you looked at our stream right now, you'll see the Templar, or you would have seen the Templar, fighting undead. It's colorful, but not WildStar bright in your face colorful. Yeah. It's colorful, but with an edgy darkness like Dark Souls to it, which I really like.
Yeah, I really think they, like I said, I haven't seen a game that I would consider having such a blend of cartoonishness and realism in it at the same time. It's very weird.
Yeah, and I that's where I say I'm kind of, it's interesting between the two of you guys. I separate the characters from the actual rest of the world. So the characters have some cartoonishness to it because of the type of monster characters and the classes they're playing. Absolutely. I'm sorry, you can't draw a Minotaur without having some sort of cartoonishness to it, because everything will look like, one of those, the cows that you see on the damn Chick-fil-A commercials. So I mean, they have to add some humor and some interest to it, right? But when you pull the characters and the vessels out and just look at the world itself, if you look at the way that they've done their trees, their mountains, the buildings, I feel like it actually has a little more realism, that step up from a cartooniness, that gives me hope that as they continually run more and more iterations, that we're going to see that type of ability for me to do that in my EK, and maybe eventually housing RP players or people that need a break because they've been grinding campaigns for way too long. Maybe that gives them the ability to do some fun customization in the EK to recharge, replenish, relax, something. And then maybe when they're done, they can pop back into campaigns and play with their guild. My biggest concern with any of these types of games especially these type of grind type of games, is you lose so many good guild friends along the way, right? I mean, some people just can't stay that connected, that in the trenches for that long. And so my hope is that by the EKs and the art styles and maybe giving us the ability to create our own Eternal Kingdoms, if we can do it in this art style, maybe it'll be enough for some of our guildmates to stay connected to the game, even though they're not grinding with us the whole time, and maybe they'll come back refreshed and ready to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the shorter campaigns will also help with that too, because you have a set goal in mind. When you're playing a normal MMO, it's for the duration, and because it has no set end time, you're not really seeing that end goal, right? So having a time at the end of it goes, okay, I'm going to finish, collect my rewards, and then I can decide whether or not I want to keep going. But having that time breaks your gaming session into smaller digestible chunks rather than I'm just here for the duration. One thing I was noticing when I was looking at these, anyone else feel like a weird oil paint / cell shaded look to the world? Like, that's what I feel like. Not like 100% cell shading, but like if you took oil painting and cell shaded it with a filter.
I don't know. I feel like it looks a bit Torchlight-esque.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a good analogy. No, wow. That's yeah.
Yep.
It does.
Yep.
And I didn't particularly like Torchlight.
Oh man, I love
That much.
Torchlight. I was like, man, I love Torchlight.
I actually thought
I mean,
it was
I
a little
never
too
played.
clicky, but I liked the Torchlight.
Yeah. It's cute.
Yeah, even
So elitist.
Frasley in chats even said he was thinking Torchlight. So I mean,
Yeah.
it's something that's in there, and
Yeah.
I like it.
I was trying to put my finger on what game does it look like. It looks like a game. What's the name of the game? And I was like, oh yes.
Well,
That one.
see, with you going in there, it's kind of funny that you said you don't like Torchlight, because it's almost like you went into Crowfall with a negative connotation at the beginning, because the thing that is so subconsciously in your head is Torchlight, and I didn't enjoy that game.
What it is.
Yeah. Might be why.
Well, I mean,
I mean, I don't really like this, like the
She's
gameplay
biased.
style of Torchlight. You know, like the
fake
Diablo-esque sort of.
Taruha, I feel like she's giving fake news right now. So you
Yeah,
just
that's what I
need
was
to
just
be really
thinking as
careful.
well.
Fake news.
Oh no,
Fake news.
fake news. Okay, I've been called
no,
out.
it is.
Sign myself
No.
up. Fine.
We're past the generation, and
Yeah.
we never had it before, but we're past the generation of one MMO for every person, or for
Oh, God.
one MMO for everybody. World of Warcraft killed that. All right, I mean, it came out at just the right time that everyone jumped into it, but then everyone
I would say
tried
everybody
to,
trying to copy it killed it.
That's true. Everyone trying to
Yeah.
copy exactly, and it created a million clones, and everyone's like, I already have this. I don't need it anymore. What we're seeing now, you'll notice that a lot of AAA studios aren't even touching MMOs. How many new MMOs from a AAA studio have you even heard of? The only one I can think of is Amazon, and they're brand new. Their new
Damn it!
world.
I was going to count that one, but I didn't think anybody would think of it.
Oh,
Are you
forget
kidding?
it.
There's a lovely Discord server set up for it already. They've released 30 seconds
Hey.
of video and 6 screenshots, and there's
really?
already
That's-
a community.
I'm
There's
behind.
already
I
a
didn't know there
community.
was video.
So
And
yeah,
people
it's
cling to
spooky.
these things.
That's
Yeah.
funny.
I wish that people would stop like MMO hopping, and I do it myself as well, but I can't seem to find a home. You know,
That's
And
the
that's the
problem.
problem.
That's the
I've
reason.
lost like.
It's
I've
because
lost-
cash shops and WoW clones are ruining everything.
Yeah, it's so sad.
And
Which
now
is
we're-
why we've turned to crowdfunding.
It is. And as I was telling you before, one of the reasons why I am willing to fund these games is because I still have hope in my heart that I will find that MMO home. Like, that's what we're all looking for at this point,
Yep.
right? Like that MMO home that we had, Anhrez, with you and me, Ultima Online, back in the day, like
Yeah.
Star Wars Galaxies.
Star Wars Galaxy.
Write it down.
I gotta move my cat so I can mark on my thing here. So there we go.
Even WoW, though. Even WoW, when it was
No,
early WoW, was
Yeah.
When WoW
Right.
launched, I was on that horrible Lightbringer server, which was the original beta server that they just turned into. It was horrible and painful, but your whole guild was there, and you were all always there, and
Yep.
it was the place you would go. And as people said, oh, it's making money, and then the splintering started to happen. That's
right.
how it goes.
How can we copy what they're succeeding in? And unfortunately, that mentality and the jump in, jump out mentality of modern gamers, Overwatch being a big game to blame in this current generation, but it's not just them. Creating a game that lasts 15 minutes and that's it. People are always looking to jump to the next thing, and
I think there's been a fundamental shift in the way people play games as well, socially speaking. Back in our day, online gaming was not a big deal. It wasn't something you did with your neighbor from across the street or your dorm room people. So you went online alone, and then you made your friends online. And so your friends were a part of the game you were playing, and if you quit the game, you kind of quit the friends too. Now we hang out in Discord, like in the Dungeon Crawler Discord.
Yeah.
Nice like a lot of us aren't even playing the same games. But we still talk shit about each other's games like we know what's going on, and it brings us together.
Right.
The salt brings everyone together.
But I know that's one of the reasons why I back these indie developments, because they're not beholden to the almighty cash god that is, the corporate structure, hopefully, that they're like, you need to make money. And like what quote unquote ruined my favorite game is when they lost their subscription, because people didn't want to pay it and they weren't happy with the number of people that were just paying it and playing. So they switched models, and I'm sure you felt the same way with the game that shall not be named, the one that every time I mention it hurts your heart. It started out as sub.
Adventures in Lockboxes for both of us.
Yeah, essentially that type of thing. We don't want that anymore. But AAA studios are only doing that because they only care about the bottom dollar.
Cash grab bastards.
And a lot of these indie studios are doing it for the love of the game that they want to make. A lot of these studios, pretty much one of their mission statements is, we want to make a game that we would want to play. And hopefully that moral guiding compass will lead them towards something better than just succeed. If their game starts succeeding, falling to the, I'm going to accept the cash shop hype or whatever monetary crap that normal games have, and sticking with the vision they first started with that attracted us in the first place.
Yeah.
And I see that Isarii ran off. So I'm going to just pick up where he left off. Animation lock, art style, state of the game. Oh, we're all the way to the point with the crafting. All right.
Wow.
Crafting discussion, extravaganza.
It's crazy. It is like the Wild West.
Anhrez, since you're the resident expert with Crowfall, I've been in it a little bit. I backed the game and I played it. Will you give a very high-level overlook of the crafting and how it is before we jump in?
So, real quick, take a lot of your assumptions from previous crafting and just kind of set it aside for a sec. So, unlike a lot of your normal games where, let's say, I want to make me a sword, in most of your MMOs, you would go looking for a sword recipe, whether you'd buy it or you'd train it or you'd learn it or something. And I find the uber sword of greatness, two-handed, blah, blah, blah. Right? Yep. And it's a recipe, and that's the sword that you can make with the materials that you get. They've kind of thrown it all. That's awesome. That right there looks like a duelist.
I'm pretty sure it is.
So where
in Doomhowl?
Doom. Nice.
That is his actual name.
In Crowfall, there's only a few recipes. There is only one two-handed sword recipe in game. What makes it special and what makes crafters like myself get all twitchy is that
in Star Wars Galaxy fans.
There it is.
Marking it down.
Yeah. Is that it's the materials I put into that recipe that makes it special. So 2 copper and 1 this has a different outcome than 1 copper, 1 ore, and 1 bronze. I mean, it really comes down to their belief is that crafters need to matter not only to to the guilds that they're part of. They need to matter to the campaigns that you're in. And as a crafter, you want to feel fulfilled by you doing your thing, just like a PvPer feels fulfilled by killing the guy across the screen. And so we're hopeful. It's still early in the crafting format, but the complexities are there. So there's nothing to buy. There's no storefronts. There's nothing NPC. If you don't craft it, it ain't there. So from every sword to every plate helm to every shield to every item in the game has to be crafted by a real-life in-person crafter. And I'll caveat that, and we won't talk about the whole mass production NPC blueprint stuff, but because that's not really in game yet. But that's still, I had to design it and hand it off to my minion to craft.
Straight out of Star Wars Galaxies, by the way.
That counts again.
So
so
you've been in the game. So you drop into the game. You start out with the ability to chop down a single tree. That's all the skill, and that's all the things that you have. Yeah, you punch in trees with this mystical axe. You take the trees, you build a hammer. You take your hammer to build a pickaxe. You take a pickaxe to be able to mine ore. Now you can make wood, stone, and ore. Now you can build things.
It definitely has a Minecraft-y type feeling to the craft.
Yeah.
Have you talked about experimentation yet?
No, God, no.
It was just a high-level overview for new players.
Okay, I saw Singear, and that's how I'm going to keep saying it, in chat said, in terms of just a one-handed sword, to his knowledge, there are about 140-ish variations of that you can craft. And that would be, like, pre-throwing thralls in there, pre-experimentation.
Not counting enchantment and not counting the ability for socketing. Yeah.
What kind of variation are we talking?
Would that come with material quality as well? Like, I mean...
both of those. Good question. So, Taruha, as of right now, there's nothing I can craft in-game that changes the look of the item. Okay. But when talking to the actual artists on their streams, you could tell that they've put in their designs, and they'll point it out in the models and saying, so when you guys do this, you see how this outside rim has this, you guys will be able to adjust it. So we're very excited about the concept of variances and optional materials. So if a sword takes 5 iron bars to make, that creates the most basic iron sword, but I can also put in optional things. I'm going to put in some coal. I'm going to put in this alchemist potion or something, and we're hoping, oh, look, you're going to have an orange line around the outside of your sword, and it's going to do a little extra fire damage because I took a basic iron sword and using the skills of a crafter and the optional materials that I can put into that recipe, I can make it Anhrez's fire sword versus General Iron Sword number 12.
Now,
and you can't name it that way.
You can change. That's what I want.
Yes.
In some of the concept art, like I remember a while ago, they were showing the knight having varying stages, like the base going from here, here, and here.
Yeah.
Are you saying, like, as of right now in the game, that there's no variation for gear, but is that something they're aiming for?
There is a variation of gear. So when you come in and you build yourself the basic set of armor, it looks a certain way. And now the nice thing is there's no reason that a knight has to wear plate. So there is right now a plate set for knight, but there's also chain set for knight and a leather set for knight. Now, again, we don't get a chance to customize any 3 of those models right now, but already you've got one character that can wear 4 different armor sets because there's the basic set that you craft when you're have no skills. Then there's leather, chainmail, or plate mail.
And they do have the concept art for different visuals for all of those for each class. At different tiers, I believe, unless they've completely
and that gets in the concept of, are you going to be a knight that dodges well, then maybe you want to wear chainmail. Mm-hmm. Are you going to be a knight that's going to be sucking up the damage? Well, then maybe you're going to take plate mail. And if I want to be a knight that does a little extra more damage, does the damage instead of taking the damage, wow, leather gives me a weapon damage modifier, but chainmail gives me dodge, where plate mail gives me X. Mm-hmm. And then that's not counting the stuff that the crafter myself put into your armor with a little bit of this and a little bit of that and my choices.
And spice and everything nice.
Yep.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you guys want a good laugh, there's an alloy chart out there that shows just alone all the different combinations of just making a single ingot of ore. And to make a piece, a helm, it takes like 5 to 8 pieces of. So the combinations 140 is on the light side, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Sin Garen in chat
very
says,
light, I would say.
And he gives a good example here of the idea of customization.
Yeah.
Plate boots. Yeah, thank you, Sin Garen, for being great in the chat room, giving a lot of updated information from it. Plate boots has 4 optional slots. Those 4 optional slots have 3 additional optional slots to improve and alter stats. And again, once more, with 2 more slots, it's technically possible to make plate boots with every substat available. So you got 4 slots, with each 4 slots having 3. Oh, dear heaven, that's 4 to the 3rd power.
Yeah, you start bring out your slide rule.
Yeah,
is what we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, that sounds.
We're gonna need a
sounds
spreadsheet.
But one of those set of optional sets are only for resistance gear right now. So one set of those optional slots would maybe give you more attack power, more damage, more stamina. One of those set of optionals, at least right now, the layers give you fire resistance, electrical resistance, physical resistance. So you can make a very complicated set, but like they said, you do have to make a broad set because they're not going to allow you to. Remember the old back in WoW, we'd all socket, the same thing. Like everyone's walking around in strength sockets for a while because that somehow, and then now Dex sockets. Mm-hmm. So they've been very careful to make sure that they're not going to allow us to push the stats too crazily by just equipment. They're going to make you have both offensive stats and some defensive stats on the armor so far.
So they're essentially locking slots to a specific role. So you can't have all 3 or all 4 resistance. It'll be like, all right, these are.
Oh, you can have more than but see, you can have 3 things. Let's call it armor layers. Okay. So I can have a single armor layer of fire resistance, a single armor of electrical resistance, and one of combat, maybe a piercing damage resistance. That's great. What I'm saying is that if one set over here gives me attack power, I can't also use those resistance slots for attack power. You have to use them in the same general field that they want you to use in those armors. So, both offensive and defensive capabilities are how you maximize your armor right now.
Right. And because this is a good question, even though Sin Garen, the awesome, has already answered it, Mano Drizzle in chat, doesn't each armor, leather, chainmail, plate, main difference is what sort of damage that it resists, like slashing, bludgeoning, piercing, etc.?
No, not in my testing. Right now, armor, if I make leather, it has 2 base stats and durability and some pieces. I need to build in what makes that armor special. Mm-hmm. So I can take 15 hide and 5 ore and make a generic set of boots. They're called leather boots. They have dodge and they have weapon, let's call it weapon efficiency. Until I use the optional slots, that's when I'm start bringing in more attack power, more damage resistance, more fire resistance. So if I want to play it cheap and I want to give Isarii some knockoff boots, I can give him some knockoff boots. Here's some leather boots. Go forth and try to survive. On the self, if I want to spend the time and effort and extra materials and make my character some boots that keep me protected from those damn confessors throwing fireballs, then I can stack my
There's no
boots,
hypothetical where that happens.
Yeah, with fire resistance and give them attack power. So there is a base model that you roll off, again, the used cars. Here's your car. It has windshield wiper blades. My car has windshield wiper blades, heated seats, and navigation. Gotcha. It's the same model of car. It's just that I tricked mine out with all the options.
Do we want to ask that earlier question we had? at this point from J-Man?
Yeah, if you can dig up what it was.
Yeah, give me a second. I'll look it up.
Okay.
Oh,
I think Taruha had something to say. Then let's do that question. Then I got something I want to jump to.
all right.
Okay.
Go ahead, Taru. I found the question, but I'll go after you.
Oh, okay. No, I wanted to just poke on another thing I found a little bit amusing, and that is that there's no currency in the game, and they're gonna let you make the currency whatever you want it to. And I read Isarii's article, and it made me giggle. Chickens? Really?
We joked about chickens being the official currency of the game early on. For me and Anhrez, since we both live in Portland, that wasn't really a joke. That was just sort of commentary on how life works here. But everybody else thought it was hilarious, so we kind of just ran with it.
It's using a barter-based system, essentially. So if you have iron, well, you're in a zone like your guild controls a keep that has heavy iron, but you need lumber. But there's no lumber around. You have to trade with someone who has a lot of lumber, and that's where your value comes in. How much do they need your iron that you need their lumber? Like, are you going to be like, I have a little bit of lumber, so if they're like, I want 10 iron per 1 lumber, you'd be like, dude, I can kind of get my own.
I'm
gonna call my friend Face Rip over here, and he's just gonna kill you. He's just gonna kill you. Yeah. Well, there's dust, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yes. Yeah. So there that has been toned down a little since the original design, but it's still like you basically craft it yourself. It's not. Yeah.
Okay. But,
so as I'm mining, I get what's called leftover erythral dust of whatever the node that I'm in. I can compress that dust and turn it into something of value, because one thing we didn't talk about Eternal Kingdoms is there's a tax to pay for all the land that you own.
Hooray!
And so how are you going to pay for all of this land? Well, that's to keep you in the campaigns playing, right? I mean, so someone's going to have to be in there earning the keep to help pay things off. So the concept
Personally, I'm hoping there's also like a whole tax return system as well.
There's a crafter whose literal job is like TurboTax. So, all right. So you're saying you had 90% usage on that iron sword for work. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Depreciation, deductions tied to durability. It'd be perfect.
Okay. J-Man1328 in chat asked a question early on that we wanted to tie in here. He says, and it's a hypothetical, so let's say you have a group of 5 that goes to collect a high-end resource, and he gave rank 8+, which early on would be impossible by yourself. Would that give people a huge advantage by having those high-end resources from grouping and such? So,
well, first of all, have we talked about grouping requirements for
we haven't.
harvesting at all? Let's do that first.
Okay.
Everybody just looks at Anhrez until he talks.
1 second is.
Oh, okay.
So grouping requirements. So here's the thing. There's plenty of things. There are plenty of things related to Crowfall that require grouping. Staying alive, So the whole concept, we're in PvP. So if I'm going out chopping down trees or mining ore, there are individual nodes, and then there are what's called mother lodes or group nodes. So I, as an individual, can go mine something, and as long as I can stay alive and grab that, run back to the team, I'm fine. But more than likely, because of point of interests in the way that the combat goes, you're going to be gathering in a group. 2 or 3 people are going to be like Meerkat, keeping an eye on the horizon, and maybe 3 of us are going to be mining like mad because, I don't know if you guys have played. If I'm on a hillside and somebody's mining across the way, you can actually physically see and hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Oh no!
So you can up on the mountains, and I'm like going, I'm up in the mountains going, hey, somebody's mining here. So
ooh, tasty pugs.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
They brought harvesting in as a way to force conflict. So even though I can harvest by myself, can I harvest and stay alive by myself? That's a whole different mechanic.
Right.
And once again,
to answer his concept about rank 8. Now remember, we're seeing a lot of loot tables right now related to rank 1 versus rank 8. Am I going to get higher grade copper out of rank 8 versus rank 1? You bet. Am I going to get more value out of mining 8 than 1? Yes. It takes better tools. It takes more skills. It takes more time. It takes more stamina to mine a more difficult node than a simple node. So until we can truly see what the difference of Isari's blue sword versus James's white sword in Made of Copper, we don't know. We don't know that. We don't know what the whole concept is related to how big of an impact high quality materials are going to bring to the game yet. I think it's going to be eventually big, but if you think about it, if you're in a high def, high loot campaign, are you going to be walking around with an epic sword?
That is
when someone can kill you and it's gone? So if you're in a full loot campaign, even though you can get purple ore to use in your sword, will you use it? Like back to your original
group
question,
size plays into that as well. If there's 30 of you, embargo, your sword doesn't matter as much.
Yeah, I'm putting that in my embargo because why would I walk around with this pimped out sword that somebody's just going to kill and take from me?
Yeah,
On the other hand,
but why wouldn't you Why wouldn't you do that though? Like, what are you going to do with the sword if you don't use it?
Because there are other campaigns. There are other campaigns that allow you to use an awesome sword that you can take from someone's inventory, but you can't take from their body.
And maybe you're saving it for a very specific keep battle or something like that, where it's against your rival guild. You want to take everything they own. So, you save it for that night, but every other day you're running around with something mid-tier that only takes like 30 minutes to gather the materials for it.
And so it's going to be really interesting. The strategy is going to be in there, but think of it this way. We talk about crafting. You're in a 20-person guild. You all drop in naked. First of all, how awkward that is. I don't even just awkward. But then how long is it going to take to get everyone a frickin' sword? I mean, it's even the most basic crappy sword, you're going to have people going out there swinging twigs, protecting people that are mining so they can come back to make swords, to give crappy swords to people, to go protect people, to go get better stuff, to make even okay swords. But during all that time, a bunch of strangers are going to try to, out of Walking Dead, come and steal all your stuff.
So, honestly, that would be a great way of using people that haven't, sort of advanced their skill very far then, right? Like the scrubs, you can just enlist them to mine.
Lemmings.
And then
gather
minions.
Yes, my gathering minions. So that is your catch-up mechanic. I put you out front as cannon fodder as Anhrez mines awesome things. If you die, sorry, but don't worry, you have crappy gear, so and I get to run back safe. So,
and that is one of the great things about a game again like this that's not reliant on instancing. It's just because Aggelos here may be shit at the game doesn't mean you can't bring him if you're not giving up a slot for it.
But again, back to Eve, right? When you come out of Eve University, a lot of people are saying, "Hey, you have knowledge. I'm going to give you some stuff. Go out and make something happen in the universe." Yeah. I feel like guilds here are going to be really important because a lot of these campaigns, you drop in solo, it's going to be hard to be by yourself. Yeah. There are some campaigns where 3 or 4 small people in a small guild could be very impactful. The more complex the campaigns, the more tougher rule sets, then traveling in a group. Using the Walking Dead references, look at Rick's team of 8 people are pretty damn scary until they met up with 70 some odd scary biker people. Right. So I mean, I feel that in the survivability of this game is that numbers are gonna matter a lot.
Yeah. Two things before we continue. First off, because he said hi, J. Todd Coleman's in chat. So hey guys,
hi, J. Todd.
Hey, you rock.
Hello again.
So that's awesome. And 2, Taro, we were talking earlier about the ore and what you'd want to use. And I'm glad Anhrez brought this up with certain campaigns and rule sets. Early on, how campaigns will work is you'll pick a rule set that works better for you, but remember that embargo thing where you go in and out, where you can send stuff into your Eternal Kingdom. there's a risk versus reward mechanic. The more dangerous that a campaign is, like that full loot campaign, you'll be able to take more out in your embargo. Versus, I'm going into the Care Bear campaign, you may put 100 in, but it's only a 50% withdrawal rate if you win. I'm just throwing these numbers out here. Whereas the full loot, it's 100% because you're like, hey, you could have lost everything, so if you win, we're going to allow you to take everything that you put in your embargo out. The Care Bear campaign, you can put 100 in, but even if you win, you're only getting 50.
And the Care Bear campaign has rank 1 and 2, right? So if you mine 100 copper nodes of rank 1, maybe you squeeze out a single purple, maybe 2. You know what I mean? It's just hard to say. But at rank 8, my stats are showing some crazy. I actually got a legendary piece of copper this last test. It fell out, and it actually made a special noise when I picked it up. It scared me a little bit. I thought someone had attacked me. So that really does make a difference. They are really pushing the concept of materials match the complexity of the campaigns to get the best stuff.
So we've moved on from crafting a little bit, and I want to bring it back.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have more to talk about there. We were talking a lot about sort of the complexity of building an item and all the different material types that go into it. We touched briefly on the idea of alloys, where you can combine, say, multiple metals to create a hybrid metal, and how that can really build into the crafting system. You're getting different stats if it's hybrid. So I wanted to talk about one of my pet issues, because this is they've directly addressed now how they're going to do it, which was what I call, for lack of a better term, variable stat crafting materials in Star Wars Galaxies. And this is something I bring up a lot because I think it was one of the things that really made the game work well. And now we know how Crowfall is going to try to replicate that, and I'm pretty happy with it. But I just wanted to talk about it because I think it's a really good discussion topic. So just to sort of explain the way it worked, the materials themselves, in a crafting system that's pretty similar to what Crowfall is doing now, raw materials had stats. So in Crowfall, for example, an iron ore that you mine might have statistical ratings for its toughness, malleability, and maybe a magical property or two. I'm not sure. I don't know if you guys have noticed by looking at me, but I'm not a blacksmith in real life. But that's the underlying reason for the varying effect of different materials on the final item stats. So those stats could differ between materials of the same type. So Star Wars Galaxies also had the flexible crafting recipes.
Marking it down.
So in other words, I'm explaining how the game works. In other words, not every iron ore was the same. I can kind of explain that in a second later, but it might roll for a range between like 1 and 1,500 for its malleability or something like that. All resources that were harvested from the same spawn would have the same stats, I believe. If it didn't, stacking would be a nightmare, which is kind of one of the concerns of implementing the system anyway, is that it would blow up your inventory if they did it like this in Crowfall. And that resource stacks of differing stats could be blended at a crafting station to average out those stats before you crafted with them. So it wasn't a usability problem once you got home. So just for an example here, I had, let's say there's... God, Star Wars Galaxies were so complicated. There were like 1 billion types of ores, like 5 big categories, all with subcategories. So I'm looking here at the Siliclastic ores, which they had cold resistance, decay resistance, heat resistance, malleability, overall quality, which is a 1 to 1,000 score, shock resistance, and unit toughness, which I think was item durability. God, we're going down the walk tunnel now. But like the cold resistance for Ardanium could roll between 300 and 452, Cortosis 382 to 568, and then down at the bottom here I've got Tertian, which could roll between 848 and 1,000. So I mean, you're looking at very different ranges depending on what metal you chose, but very different ranges within each metal if you happen to find a node like the best roll possible for every stat. So basic. Now there's some nightmare scenarios that this creates. By the way, I don't want to say this is a perfect system.
No.
For one, your database is just disgusting if you're doing this. I'm sure we could do better than Star Wars Galaxies.
As a spreadsheet guy, it didn't work well from the concept, and then the blending piece created a lot of risk. So we, but what gets you passionate about that? I feel like there's a chunk of that in Crowfall, but not the complexity there of multiple pieces.
The big thing, I think what Crowfall is doing that we talked about one of the big benefits was every crafted item could be different. And I think Crowfall has done a good enough job of that. With the complexity and the blending the different resources. And resources do have varying quality. Like iron ore doesn't have individual stats, but it can be, it's the same quality system.
Gray, so it has gray, common,
white, blue, purple, orange.
Yeah. So there's, so there's 6 levels of the quality, and I can blend 3 purple with 3 green and 3 white. And the resulting iron bar or copper bar out of that is a statistical probability of those 3 mixing with a little RNG. So it could either be a purple bar, it could be a blue bar, or it can be a green bar based on my skills and the unluckiness of the gods. So you can blend
RNG.
Various qualities. Oh, there is here, and they give us the skills to learn. I have to sacrifice combat skills to manage my RNG as a crafter. So when they say you can play a crafter, you can play a crafter. But to be a good crafter, I have to spend those skill times learning things about crafting instead of learning things about combat.
And at least one of your 3 disciplines probably will have to be in crafting, which is like a subclass you can equip. And there's crafting gear to.
Yeah, you can build specifically crafting gear that increases.
Which is another Star Wars Galaxies item.
Yeah.
Just
write it down.
Yeah, I'm just playing into it at this point. But okay. So besides the complexity of the item being crafted and how they're all unique, I think Crowfall is nailing that. The one where I'm less sure is that supply chain procurement was huge in Star Wars Galaxies.
Yeah.
If you were the best crafter, you needed to be working with the best and most dedicated gatherers, and they were random spawns, so that might not always be the same person. But getting that like 99% roll across all of the stats made a huge difference in the level of gear you were making. And sure, it's a sandbox game, so not everybody all gear is temporary, so nobody's shooting for the best all the time. But like if you could have it, that really set you apart. And I'm going to throw to Anhrez on that one because he knows a lot more about gathering than me in its current iteration. But how do you think that sort of supply chain, having access to the very best, obviously what campaign you're in matters. I don't know if there's biomes where different resources spawn in different areas within the worlds. Obviously there's not yet. It's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll help.
If you take a look at the current maps right now, we've seen 3 maps from them, and these are just early iterations. One's called Sanctuary. It's a PvE map, very similar to an EK. The quality of the materials are all tier 0, right? There's easy to kill creatures for food. There's really crappy wood, really crappy stone, and really crappy ore. There's a Scorn server, or what's called a Corruption server. Those are 2 different maps. It's interesting. Back where your spawn is, where your area is, it starts in tier 4 resources, much better than you get in the EK. As you get closer and closer to the center of the map, where more conflict will happen, where I'm getting up to your border and you're getting up to mine, rank 6, rank 7, rank 8, you're starting to see the higher end materials. Those are tied to points of interest. So there's a sawmill here. Well, around the sawmill, there's some really awesome trees. So you're going to want to hold the sawmill. So you hold the sawmill because it's surrounded by trees that are really awesome. Well, like you used your analogy, I'm not paying 10 iron ingots for a single piece of wood. Why don't I just go kill the guys that hold the sawmill? And so their concept of point of interests will allow us to create conflict. Quality resources will be kind of tied. Oh, here's a quarry. What do you think of a quarry? Where I'm thinking of stone. So maybe if I'm curious on where do I get the better stone here in town, it's going to have to be over by the quarry. So do I need the quarry? No, we got a lot of stone last time. We're fine. We're going to let those guys keep it for now, but we're going to keep an eye open because when we run out of stone to build our city, we're going to have to go kick them out of the quarry because we need some stone.
Or when your gear breaks. I just like to bring up, there's a reason that decay happens, and your gear will eventually break. And it's so that there's this continual need. I know that sounds horrible. That's why I got to bring it up to anybody that's only
modern MMO
if you've
games.
only played, it's theme park. If you've only played a theme park, the gear is your goal. So someone saying you're going to lose your gear sounds awful. But in a game like this, the gear, you should think of the gear the same way you'd think of your food buff. It lasts longer, but it's just a tool that you're using. And to steal a phrase from Eve,
take you 20 rolls
never buy anything you can't afford to lose.
That's it. And you didn't have to spend 30 weekend nights hoping to get the lucky roll from the boss you just killed to get that sword.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, your base entry level thing takes like 5-10 minutes to craft. Like it to gather and craft.
Yeah, I can become naked to full armor and full weapon set as a dual weaponer in under 11 minutes. So our guild has actually been speed training our people because you're all dropping in, so it's kind of a fun thing to learn. But I feel that people will become emotionally attached to items in the mid-range campaigns because you're less likely to lose them. And you're going to be more land and point of interest worried in the campaign on the high-end campaigns because you're going to die. I'm sorry. That's what the whole vessel system is about. They're allowing us to dig up dead bodies in the graveyard and actually have a grave robbing stat because they expect you to die. Grave digging is a skill.
Wait, it is a skill.
It is a skill. You have to build a shovel and you go dig up corpses to then Frankenstein a new body together with alchemy, then to dust it off and use it for later. And so that's how you build a vessel.
Gives a whole new meaning to cold as gold. So, I mean.
Yeah. So I feel people will be starting to become more attached to their vessels, more attached to their training, and more attached to the guild's efforts in the higher end campaigns than things, because things are going to be fleeting. Yeah, you said, I think it's awesome. You don't wield a sword. You can't be okay with losing. That's going to be what it's going to be like in the dregs and the shadows.
I love what J Todd just said in chat, by the way. And then you can go, which was he goes, haha, yeah, the team wasn't even sure if I was serious about grave digging. But
I was going to highlight that too.
If you've not actually seen the game, I will build this weekend, and I will send you guys a link. I will build a shovel. I will stream some grave robbing and get it up there just for you guys to watch. You're digging, all of a sudden a bunch of crap falls out of the ground. Look, there's a torso floating there. That looks like a really good torso. I think I'll take that one.
I think I would like to see this. Yes.
Look, I'm imagining, do different body parts come out of the grave?
Pieces come out, and you're like, oh, damn it, that's the fourth femur I've got. I really need a foot. Yeah, I guess I have to go dig up some more graves.
Oh Jesus! Well, that's detail.
Yeah. When you're gathering, like if you're chopping at a tree, you see a little wood icon falls to the ground, and it's in a bubble that indicates its quality. Like it'll be a white bubble if it's
body
garbage.
Parts flying.
Yep. So apparently, grave digging also does body parts. Yep. Okay. I like it.
That's pretty morbid.
And
but awesome.
We have a seg from Frasley in chat.
Yes.
This sounds like a survival game in an MMO.
Oh God!
No, we're not going there yet. That is our last discussion.
Okay.
We're not going there yet.
All right.
But we're close. Let's see. I do have a couple other. Yes, question.
Yeah. Is this going to be another instance of if you're not playing with a bunch of people, you're going to be fucked? Like if you don't know a lot of people.
That's a really fair question. It depends on the campaign, I think, more than anything else. Because if you drop in naked into a free-for-all, you're going to be in trouble, if you don't know how to play the game and you don't know who you can trust. If you drop into, let's say, the faction one where you choose a order, chaos, or balance based on the lore and based on the pantheon of gods, well, you're dropping into a team whether you're part of a guild or not. So if you're guildless, there are some great opportunities related to certain campaigns that you'll be able to drop in, meet some people, learn your skills, maybe find a guild to be with, maybe find some people to run with, because you're on my side, whether I just met you or not, because you dropped into chaos and I'm running on chaos, and we need each other to win.
Excellent. Now, I always have to say this, because I sort of understand that there does need to be accessibility for people to load in and meet people in game. And I think the faction rule sets are going to do a great job of that. But as far as catering to solo players go, I have zero sympathy.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't
Yeah,
mean,
like go play any other genre. Yeah.
I don't mean like you should be able to go and like do everything on your own. I'm just wondering, like, is it going to be like if you don't have a
get murdered
massive
within
group
5
of
minutes
friends?
and you can't figure anything out? You're not given a chance.
Yeah, like what happened to me in Ark when I first logged into a PvP server. I got knocked out, pulled into the water. He tried to drown me.
It's all about the campaign. We're not dropping into, if you choose to go into the shadows, you're dropping to H1Z1, King of the Kill, and people are going to kill you for whatever scrap of cloth they can pull off your dead body. If you drop into God's Reach or something up higher, you're going to drop in back into your safe area. You're going to find a bunch of people that are that are working with you.
And you should join up with them. I mean, this is definitely a game that wants you to guild. If you've listened to even the way we talk about gathering, and we haven't even gone into it all yet. It's the big nodes need a group. You need people that are specialized into crafting. Yeah, I know you're a cheater. No,
that's true. It's true.
He's a clever abuser of game mechanics. Yeah. Okay, big nodes that should require a group.
Yes.
You need someone to get legendary materials. This needs background. No, it doesn't.
Yeah.
To get the best materials, you need someone
gathering
in
is
your
a thing.
group who has specialized into a leadership skill to buff all the other gatherers in the group to get access to that final upgrade, which I think is great.
You guys play EverQuest? Were you guys any EverQuesters? Yeah. So there were certain things that took a social effort to get.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yep, absolutely.
So if we visualize certain things in game as mobs, those little nodes are solo monsters. The big nodes of stone, the big nodes of iron are team-based social gathering requirements, and they have good things in them that you're going to need as a team. So they have put in some
incentive for people to group up, whether or not they have friends to group up with.
Can you get to a competitive mid-tier without grouping? It might be a little painful, but yeah.
And I think that's what some of the earlier...
But the game really wants to push you towards playing with your guild, and that is exactly how MMO should be designed.
Yeah. I agree, but playing in those higher level campaigns, like you were saying, the more careberry campaigns naturally lead you to a way, such as doing the faction campaign, that you're forced into a group of people with which you can more easily make friends than the gank boxes. And as you're making the friends, joining the guilds, maybe then once you have a group of people together going, hey, we got a nice group of people here. We've been playing in the faction campaign for a while. Let's form a guild. Let's try our hands at something deeper.
Yeah. And we haven't even got into the fealty whole thing. So a small guild here who's kicking ass and taking names at the mid-tier campaigns, they want to drop into one of the big campaigns. They can come in as a small guild, or they can swear fealty to a larger guild and become a specialized faction underneath their guild. There's a lot of mechanics.
Robust alliance system.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of mechanics.
There's a whole hierarchical tree there that's very cool.
Yes.
Yeah. I'd completely forgotten about that. Let me throw to Anhrez. We've got a couple articles that we're going to have in the show notes here. We don't really need to go like one by one. Okay. I got my one thing that I really wanted to talk about, which is the way materials are handled in the crafting. You have any highlights? We've got two here.
There's a couple of good ones. The MMO Central one was done back in November, and I'll say 50% of those questions have either been answered or they've pivoted on their mechanics, because I was asking questions really early. My most recent article that popped out on Stealth really breaks down the concept of gathering nodes, treating nodes like monsters, right? So if you think you have a rank 1 copper node and a rank 8 copper node, it's easy for you to think about attacking those nodes like a one hit dice monster versus an 8-hit dice monster, because 1, it takes more to kill it. 2, they always have better loot the higher the hit dice it has, and it actually works on your pickaxe. It does more damage to your equipment. So I also talk about what the stats mean. This is a game. I don't have a picture to show you, but if you go into the game and hit the key that shows you your stats, it's ridiculous. I mean, there are hundreds of stats in the game. And so trying to understand which stats are important to a crafter or not, it's confusing right now. And so I tried to break it down the best that I could by giving examples of what each stats give you by using them. I thought your crafting variables with stat materials was a really good one, Isarii. I mean, it is going to come down to risk versus reward. Am I going to spend expensive, fancy ore, and I'm going to give it to somebody that has a chance of dying and being picked up? Because not only is it bad that they lost it, now your enemy has an awesome sword to kill you faster with. So it's not just the loss. I just want to make that really clear to everyone in the in chat too. It's, as a crafter, it's not just I spent all that time to make a sword and Isarii can't keep freaking he keeps hands on it. Now he gave it to my enemy and that guy's probably going to kill me with it. So making the choices related to what am I going to spend on crafting, risk versus rewards is going to be a thing. And guilds are going to have quartermasters. They're going to have gathering managers. They're going to have stuff to really think about materials coming in, how are we spending it, how much am I going to take to that embargo, or versus how much are we going to selfishly use to try to win this thing? Because if you're losing, and you're losing big, you lose it anyway.
Yeah, you do.
Well,
you lose what you keep in the embargo.
You might also want to employ some teachers on how to play the game, you know?
Yeah.
PvP coaches.
Yeah. Hey, I've already heard guilds talk about having small tuner schools. They're going to go into those rank 1 and 2 campaigns. They're going to talk about how this character works with this character. And hey, you know, when you use your ultimate, make sure that the confessor's ready to throw that stupid fire tornado, because then we kill everybody. So
you sound so salty about that fire tornado.
I am salty because here's the thing. What makes me as a duelist, I'm scurrying.
I'm about to say, this coming from that goddamn varmint.
And they throw the fire tornado. It pulls me out of the ground, throws me up in the air, and it cooks me like a really bad Thai food on a spit. And I'm like, yeah, so it takes you right out of stealth.
Gotta get some satay.
Peanut sauce.
Some soy sauce would go great with this duelist.
And that brings us nicely tying into food and the survival mechanic. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That's up to Isarii. I mean,
Sorry, please.
Are you ready? Are you ready, Isarii, to talk about survivability? Because
I am. That was a very good one.
I've actually killed somebody and took nothing but their apples. This is how bad this game is. This is how bad this game is. I spend all this time, I kill somebody, and I'm looking at their stuff going, man, I got all that good stuff, but damn it, he's got a stack of 10 apples. I took it from him. I wonder if that poor player starved because he comes back in and he's got no food.
Oh, well, let's jump in there. So let me start. So my first impression of the game, I really want to start this from you log in your spirit, which is just a blue crow. That is your character. Yeah. And you claim a corpse from underneath the statue of whatever class you'd like to be. And then you're out there and you're naked. Now, one thing that I don't know if it's going to stick, by the way, is you're not actually naked. It does show the appearance. Even honestly, if they don't make you look naked, I'd be fine with that.
I think they pretty much said they weren't gonna. Naked is just base armor.
Nobody wants naked raids. Yeah, so they at least make you look like you're in your your normal armor there. Yeah. So so you start that and then you go punch some trees, and you are punching like in an actual survival game, but you've got is an axe. So all you can do is chop down trees. So you chop down trees. You get some wood, you use the wood, you're able to craft a stone hammer. So then you can, out of wood somehow. So then you're using this amazing wood, low quality wood that you found to break apart stone rocks with you can make a pickaxe, and then from there it's a skinning knife.
It's like basic.
Yeah, so now you've got your
survival.
basic materials.
Yeah,
it just takes a minute. It just takes a minute. There's a basic recipe where you can create each type of weapon that you could want in armor, which takes very little of those just crap materials, and that gets you rolling. So first of all, that just feels really survivally, and then you look up to the top left, and you're like, "There's a chicken meter," and it's
is this the same chicken that you use for currency? I'm confused.
Yeah, chicken legs.
Everything is chicken here in Portland.
All right, everything is chicken.
So we've got these chicken legs.
It's like Castlevania.
And at this point, you probably noticed one's down to the bone and the next has a bite out of it, especially if you're as slow as me. And you're looking at this and you're like, ah, shit, what's that mean? And it is pretty punishing. I don't recall every tier, but at about 7%.
If it goes down and you no longer get your stamina, your hit points. So you get starving, your hit points don't come back. And then you go down farther, and then your stamina doesn't come back, so you can't even run away from people because you're weak. Yeah, no sprint. So
and then at the bottom, you can't have above like 20% health, I think it is.
Yeah, it just takes stuff away.
It just well, you could technically get overhealed up to it, but there's a big dot that takes you back.
Yeah, so there will be a lot of murdering over food.
So you need food.
Yes.
So this is actually the subject of the next article I'm working on that will come out at MMO Games when I get around to it. Probably soon now that I'm talking about it.
If you watch H1Z1, the equivalent in H1Z1 is helmets, first aid kits, and car keys. Those are the three things that even good gamers who have tons of stuff don't leave on bodies as they go by. Because two things. One, they need them, and two, they don't want you coming behind them and picking it up later. So the last thing I want to do is kill somebody and leave food there because, I've got plenty of food. Well, I don't want somebody who's not me picking up food from this guy. So you'll have people pick up food and they'll destroy it instead of leaving it on the carcass because someone else will pick it up.
So I want to talk about Star Wars Galaxies some more. So I had a friend and we were looking at the chicken meter. And he was like, okay, what's the point? And first of all, he's not an MMO guy, so that's fine. But, I thought about it too, and I was like, what does this add to the game besides a degree of micromanagement and the need to carry food around? And, that's something, but it is just micromanagement. It's basically a big long-term maintenance buff that you need consumables to get through in its current state. And I think that's kind of annoying. It's not really adding any sort of in-depth customization or anything in its current phase. But that's where I want to take it from here. We've got all of the Star Wars Galaxies people, like a lot of them who I like, working on this game. Social loops are something that they talk about very, very often, and I think this presents a real interesting opportunity there. So, and what really kicked me off to this is there's sort of a survivalist skill. I don't know the depth of it right now that's being added to the game, and you have things like campfire, and that was where I was like, Star Wars Galaxies had a campfire skill. And I talked about this earlier. They called it battle fatigue, which was controversially a modeling of PTSD for Star Wars Galaxies. And as you took damage, as you were wounded, this battle fatigue ticked up. And the only way to cure this was to go find an entertainer, and they would just aggregate within cantinas and, listen to the music, get a dance, and tip them some money. And it was a really big social scene. And I have no idea if this is the idea here, but I think it would work really well, is to turn that survival mechanic a little bit into a social loop where, maybe everybody can gather around the campfire, and once the system is more fleshed out, they have someone who's skilled in campfire. Maybe you've got like a bard character. Probably not.
My God.
Oh, God.
But you've got, you have these non-combat skills that are based around sort of a little bit of enforced downtime that has a social requirement to it. And, if it's just the chicken meter where you have to hoard apples, I'm saying, yeah, that doesn't add a whole bunch to the game. Not for me. But if this turns into a system that brings players together in a way that, where you can actually talk to each other and you're not just like, on edge constantly trying to murder people, try to coordinate your attacks. Although there would be, if you're going to cook campfires, obviously you got to do a big smoke plume, right? So that people come kill you. But I could see there being a real potential for a massive social loop here that is analogous to a game, something we have never seen any other game but Star Wars Galaxies do. And how would I do that? Basically, instead of is I would add to the chicken meter. Basically, I think I would say, I would say maybe if you're eating in this campfire or in a building that's been designated as an inn in a player city, I would combine it with Star Wars Galaxy's buffing system, which worked very similarly, and basically let you overfeed, or maybe buff it so that the rate at which your chicken meter decays is a lot lower. And if you're doing your eating at a campfire with a player that's skilled in survivalist skills, you don't have to eat very. Man, I really got to write this down for my article. No, you don't have to eat as often. You don't have to worry about supplying your entire group with food as much, and you're doing it in a way that gets players together, gets them sitting down.
Gives them a reason.
It gets them hanging out, and it's super RP on top of it. You're forcing them to RP.
So are you guys? Are you seeing the chat? I mean, it's your concept of, you're right there with the social loop. I think, and J Todd and Scree and a couple people have chimed in. One thing you're talking about is large guilds. This allows them to be at a disadvantage versus advantage. So if I have 50 people I need to feed versus 20 people that I'm battling, I have less food to collect.
Also, while we're talking about supplying people with food, J Todd, I would really appreciate it if you put farming in this game so I can make my girlfriend play it, because I think that's I need to recover her from Stardew. Yeah, there she is. I need to recover. Actually, she didn't show up, but it's kind of cropped up here. But I can't get her out of Stardew Valley right now, and this could be the thing that does it. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I mean, if you look in the skill trees right now, there is a non-filled out icon holding for farming. So it will be there. It will be there. So I do like the concept of survivability. Sieges are a huge thing. So you guys build this awesome city, and you're in the city, and all I need to do is keep you in there, and eventually you're going to be eating each other. So there's these concepts of food and survivability. Yes, you jump right in, Taruha.
Is there going to be cannibalism?
Now, zombie guts does exist in game. I do have a screenshot of a zombie guts. Now, but it was from a zombie, not from a player. Now, I killed some zombies and guts came out, and I decided to keep them for later. Now, I didn't kill a player character and take off their arm to gnaw on later.
Well, so there is a cool thing.
there is a small nuanced piece right there. I don't know if cannibalism, but zombie guts are technically salvage. You're right, Singara, they're one of them. You get food from apples from trees, grubs from trees, pine cones from trees. You get food from the creatures that you kill, zombie guts from zombies that you kill, and then there's
the zombie guts.
You can utilize them to make a lovely soup. Maybe I haven't seen the recipe yet, but I'm excited about it. And then the last piece is there will be a horticultural tree of some sort. But again, back to the original pain, and I'll have to not train combat to become a good farmer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Somebody keep the farmer alive.
My girlfriend's going to be useless in combat.
Yes. No. Somebody keep the farmer alive so they can plant.
And that, by the way, that is, you guys are going to hate me, very Star Wars Galaxies. If you were a crafter in that game, you had no combat skill. You only had your one character in that server. If you were a crafter, that was all you did. Yeah. And Crowfall isn't drawing that hard line, which I'm totally okay with, but they're making you choose. If you want to be a really good, really dedicated crafter, it's going to come at a price, and I like that. I think that's good. And looking at this system, obviously if WoW made you be a dedicated crafter, that would be a disaster. But this has the complexity. It's required enough. It's just completely required, actually. There's no enough to it. You need people to do it. It's got the complexity to make it interesting. It loops into the system in a whole bunch of different ways in terms of reward structures. I think, and this is really bold, but I think this really could be the game that gets the Star Wars Galaxies crafting formula back. And I know everybody, especially people that are watching this podcast tonight, are sick of hearing us veterans talk about how amazing it was and how it hasn't been repeated. And it looks like it's happening. It's going to be very, very close.
Well, I'm sure you like get senpai nosebleeds and happy face.
Yes.
It does happen.
Yeah.
Oh, squeak.
I don't know enough anime stuff to really do much better than that, but
I don't anime. But I
cool.
just imagine you nosebleeding to the idea of a game akin to Star Wars Galaxy.
There's a lot.
We didn't get into thralls.
Yeah.
We didn't get into blueprints. We didn't get into really some of the other social mechanics. We hadn't get into alchemy, necromancy, any of those other crafting things that all require jewel crafting, which also requires a social gathering mechanic. We didn't even get into the archetypes where we talked about who does what, who's the healers, who's the damage dealers. It's a deep game. It's gonna take a lot of effort for people to talk this out.
And we didn't really get to talk much about the assassin class, but we did a little bit.
Yeah, the assassin class
Faye.
was revealed this week.
Yes.
And I did get a little bit of my whining in about jumping height, so that was my one point. Also, why does every MMO need a wings class now? That's Aggelos.
Gliding is fun.
Look, this is another one of our gritty sandboxes that's getting weeaboo stuff in it. I'm just kidding.
Nice.
This doesn't look weeaboo at all. But in the last show, we complained about something about ashes and creation. With a costume designer. We're like, oh god.
Yeah.
Anything but the weeb.
Anything. Yeah.
All right, well, this was Dungeon Crawlers Episode 4. Before we go, I want to go ahead and let each one of my co-hosts here, give a little shout-out, do any plugs, anything like that. I'm going to start with Isarii, who mentioned Star Wars Galaxies 21 times.
That's underestimating the beginning. That is actually lower than I expected.
Counted. I did not count if you talked about mechanics. I only counted if you specifically said Star Wars Galaxies. If I counted when you just threw in vague mechanic references, it would be much higher.
Well, I wanted to talk about crafting because I think I think that's one of the most interesting parts of Crowfall. And I'm not even, by the way, the worst part about this, I did not play a crafter in Star Wars Galaxies. I didn't.
22.
I didn't main one. I just thought that the social world that game's crafting system created, and the way me finding my gear, where I had to go to someone's house, like I had shops that were my dedicated shops because I knew they'd have the gear I want, was awesome. And I haven't seen anything like that ever again. So I'm looking at this as someone who really doesn't give a shit about crafting in terms of doing it myself and saying, the crafting system was amazing, and it created the virtual world that I want to be in. And Crowfall looks like it's bringing it back. So, let me talk about me, though. Enough about this game. My name is Isarii, known offline as Ethan McPhee. I write primarily at MMOgames.com. You might know me from TamrielFoundry.com, as Aggelos mentioned, for the TES Online fan site community. My personal blog's at EricPenman.com. You can find me at Ethan McPhee on Twitter, which is where I do most of my social media stuff. I also write about single-player games at Gamespace.com, which is an offshoot from the MMORPG.com team, where I also have some planned things coming. Yes, that's me.
All right, so we have no more introductions because he took all of our time. No, I'm just kidding. Taruha.
All right.
I Twitch stream every day almost. You can find me at Twitch Taruha. Shut up. You can find me at Taruha_gaming on Twitch, and the same tag on Twitter for convenience.
Nice. Anyway. And our special guest, Anhrez. How are you? And
thanks for having me. I think it was great. I love talking.
We're awesome.
Lots of mechanical, with great references of people who have different experiences and different backgrounds. I write for MMO-Central.com. I do some of their news pieces and occasional articles. I'm also working with the Stealth.blog, which is where you can find that most recent article related to Gathering, which is going to be a huge thing in Crowfall. I can be found at Anhrez on Twitter. I'm huge in the forums. Make sure if you're interested, Crowfall has a Discord that's kind of just people who are active in the community. It's kind of called the Crowfall Discord. At any given time, there's a lot of people in there. We're starting to see a little bit of the trash talking as guilds start getting around and actually starting to do some combat testing. Don't forget, if you are a Crowfall backer, I think if you're beta 1 and ahead of that, anyone in the alpha sit, you're open to come and play. They're kicking on the servers tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. PST time. And they're going to be open, I think, through Sunday. So the testing for Crowfall runs mostly on the weekends. They really do post quite a bit about getting people in there and getting them to test.
Absolutely. If you're not registered or anything like that, if you sign up for their email listing, they often send out emails whenever new things are coming. Thank you so much for my co-host, Isarii, Taruha, Anhrez. Thank you so much for showing up, talking about Crowfall. We will probably end up doing more about Crowfall in the future, since obviously we barely scratched the surface.
I was going to say, I feel a part 2 coming on.
Probably. Or at this point, more like part 7. Anyway.
I feel like we're chasing him down. I feel like the community's starting to get excited. We're starting to see some great community content. Mm-hmm. That counts you guys. Thank you, because I feel like the community has a lot to say and a lot to look at, and they want to start talking about it. There's only so much the studio can do to release stuff every week or every month. They're busy making a game. So it's going to be people like yourselves, people in the community, people with blogs, people with forum posts, you guys with a show. You're going to have to help spread the news, raise good questions. Hell, some of the discussions related to the survival mechanics, I'm writing down. I'm going to create forum posts. You guys had some really good questions. And so I think that's where we're going to find a lot of momentum and a lot of excitement about the community, is people like yourselves just asking good, straightforward, honest, open-ended questions, and let's get some answers.
Absolutely. I want to thank our chat room. You guys have been amazing tonight, and a special thank you to Todd Coleman for showing up in the chat room. That was unexpected, but incredibly awesome. So thank you so much for showing up to our little show here. You can find me, Aggelos, on Twitter at Aggelos_WOF. That's where you find me. And, of course, you can find everything we do at the Dungeon Crawler Network, DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com, YouTube.com/DungeonCrawlerNetwork. Anywhere where you type in that name, you'll probably find us. This podcast will be available on our YouTube page as well as on iTunes, Google Play, wherever your podcasts are found. Thank you so much. You guys rock, and we'll hopefully see you in Crowfall. See you later, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.
The Dungeon Crawlers Podcast is a production of DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com. Funding for the Dungeon Crawlers Podcast is provided by the generous listeners of the Dungeon Crawler Network. To support the Dungeon Crawler Network, visit us on Patreon. Music in this episode is produced by Ben Sound. You can find this and other royalty-free music at bensound.com. Check out this and all of our other podcast offerings at DungeonCrawlerNetwork.com.